This Film is Lit, the podcast where we finally settle the score on one simple question. Is the book really better than the movie? I'm Brian, and I have a film degree, so I watch the movie, but don't read the book.
And I'm Katie. I have an English degree, so I do things the right way and read the book before we watch the movie.
So prepare to be wowed by our expertise and charm as we dissect all of your favorite film adaptations and decide if the silver screen or the written word did it better. So turn it up, settle in, and get ready for spoilers, because this film is lit. Katie.
Yes,
We've been together for almost 5 years.
that's true.
We've traveled together.
Mm-hmm.
We've lived together.
Mm-hmm.
We stayed up till 5 in the morning discussing critical analysis together.
That's also true.
We started new hobbies together and quit new hobbies together. We've built furniture together and reared cats together. We've laughed at nothing together and cried at nothing together. We started this amazing podcast together. We've argued about politics and religion together. But we've agreed about those things even more together. And now we both listen to this overly long cliche-ridden proclamation together. So that's exciting. We spent nearly every day for the last 4.5 years together. And I would have never believed I could be so happy being so close to another human being for so long. What I'm trying to say, Katie, is I think I love you. My heart, it feels like my chest can barely contain it. Like it's trying to escape because it doesn't belong to me anymore. It belongs to you. And if you wanted it, I'd wish for nothing in exchange. No gifts, no goods, no demonstrations of devotion. Nothing but knowing you loved me too. Just your heart in exchange for mine. Will you marry me? Get you a ring?
Yes.
If you say no, we can cut it out of the podcast. I know, and the worst thing, it's April 1st. It's not an April Fool's Day thing. It just happened to line up on April 1st. You gotta say it into the mic so people can hear.
Yes.
Good. That would have been a terrible way to start this podcast. You like the ring?
Yes, I do.
Go on this one.
Yeah.
They did a rush job on it, so to get here in time. I don't have a real intro, so well, that's the intro this week, so I don't have an actual intro. Hello and welcome back to This Film is Lit, the podcast where we talk about movies that are based on books. I know this came out the day after April 1st, but that was in fact real. We did just get engaged on the podcast. I figured I was trying to think of when and how to do it for a long time. And I thought, what better place than this thing we've done and kind of made together?
Yeah.
And it's public, but also private. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, it's not like there's not a crowd.
Yeah.
But people get to be there and join in without us being like putting you, on the spot. I was like, this seems kind of like the perfect place. And then I also forced you for us to do Stardust for a couple reasons. One, because it's your favorite movie. Two, so I could steal that quote and use it at the end of my thing. And tweak it around a little bit.
I'm glad I'm not a dormouse.
Yeah, you weren't a dormouse during that. But yeah. So yeah, there you go. Thanks for being there for all the people who listen to us. And there's consider that the announcement. You may need to tell some people before they listen. I don't know. That's fine. But see, you can't tell them tonight. They won't believe you because it's still April 1st.
But I have to, because the podcast posts at like 5 in the morning.
You can tell, I'm sure you can tell, family members and they'll believe you. But, if you post it on Facebook, I think people, I don't know. I think that was it actually is kind of an added funny thing that it is April 1st. It just lined up that way. It wasn't my design. I was like, son of a bitch. Whatever. We're going to let it go. Oh, it is, I don't remember, 45th episode or so, and we are doing Stardust, which is Katie's favorite movie, and where I stole that beautiful quote, part of it, the first part I wrote. But anyways, let's get into it and not dilly-dally any longer, and let me sum up.
Let me explain. No, there is too much. Let me sum up.
The village of Wall sits alongside a portal into the realm of fairy. Every 9 years, beings from both sides cross back and forth, visiting the great traveling market. On one such occasion, Dunstan Thorne crosses and goes to the market to find a gift for his intended, but finds so much more than that. Almost 18 years later, Dunstan's son Tristram has no inkling of his unique heritage. He crosses the wall into Fairy in hopes of finding a fallen star to impress his crush, Victoria. He finds the star, but to his surprise, it's a girl called Yvain. Tristram and Yvain are initially begrudging travel companions, but as they face a murderous witch intent on eating Yvain's heart and power-hungry princes vying for the throne, they gradually come to care for each other. Curses are broken and witches are outfoxed, and Tristram eventually comes to learn that he isn't an ordinary citizen of Wall. He's the heir to one of Fairy's most powerful lordships.
Oh, let me try to sum up this movie. Again, I didn't write mine down because I like to ramble. Tristane. I feel like they say Tristane even though it's spelled Tristan. I guess it's like the British pronunciation.
I feel like they go back and forth a little.
Anyways, Tristan is a young man, an awkward, clumsy young man who's a bit of an outcast, who is desperately in love with Victoria.
Yes.
And is trying to court her. She kind of spurns his advances in favor of the more traditionally handsome and stereotypically machismo suitor, Humphrey. So one night he tries to convince her once again, and she's like, "Look," and they see a shooting star, and she goes, "If you bring me that star but in a week before my wedding, I will marry you, or before Humphrey my birthday, I will marry you." And so he goes on an adventure over the wall, which separates their town Wall from, we find out, Stormhold is the magical fairy world. He goes over the wall, also set up previously. The prologue is that Tristan is the son of a princess from the land of Stormhold, and his dad, who is like a mortal earth man. And so Tristan is essentially like a prince, kind of, but he doesn't know it. But he finds out. He tries to go over the wall, can't, gets a candle from his dad and gets a little bit of his backstory, goes to try to find his mom, but thinks of Victoria, crash lands on the on the star, basically lands right on top of it. The star is actually a person. Meanwhile, there's the king's dead, and I forgot about this. The king dies. Now all of his sons are fighting for the throne, and if one of them gets the ruby or something, they take the throne, and he shoots the ruby out into space, and that's what knocks the star down. So now the star and the ruby necklace are together, and Tristan's there, and he takes her, and he goes, and he kidnaps her, and he's like, "I'm going to take you back to Victoria, because then she'll marry me." And Yvain's like, "No." And then there's some hijinks, and they go on a journey. Ultimately, and also the witches there's some witches, they're evil, they want to take the star so they can eat it and get eternal youth. So there's like a lot of different threads going on here. Ultimately, the witches try to get her, blah, blah, blah. All the princes die except for Tristan. Over the course of their road trip, they run into pirates and all kinds of fun stuff. Yvain falls in love with Tristan, and Tristan realizes he loves Yvain. She confesses her love to him. There's some nonsense at the end. Ultimately, they get trapped. They profess their love for each other, and then they get caught by the witch at the end, and they're going to sacrifice her so that they can eat her heart. And Yvain shines bright like a diamond, in the words of Rihanna, and kills the witch. Tristan, being the only remaining prince bloodline, saves his mom. Has the ruby necklace thing, which it puts it back together, which I have a question about. And then he becomes the king, and they live happily ever after, have a bunch of kids, blah, 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 fairy tale ending. That's essentially it. There's a lot of other stuff along the way.
Yeah. This one is kind of hard to sum up, I think, because we are following 3 different like plot threads.
Yeah, I kept forgetting that I hadn't introduced like the witches or the
And I mean they're all like intertwined and they
Yeah.
all end up in the same place, at least in the movie.
Yeah.
But it is kind of hard to like succinctly sum this
a little
one
tough
up.
to kind of wrap it all up. So but yeah, that's what happens. And that's the sum up. So now we're going to get to the game show portion and play Guess Who.
Who are you?
No one of consequence.
I must know.
Get used to disappointment.
Okay.
We have quite a few
Oh boy. All right.
this week. I think you will do good with this, though.
If you
I
say
believe
so.
in you.
Okay.
A tall, handsome woman with black hair and dark eyes and red lips.
A tall, handsome woman with black. Say it one more time, real quick.
A tall, handsome woman with black hair and dark eyes and red lips.
That's gonna be Tristan's mom. I don't know her name. Princess.
Her name is Una.
Una.
But this character is actually Michelle Pfeiffer's character.
Oh, the witch,
Yeah.
the main witch.
She's the witch queen in the book. They call her Lamia.
Yeah,
in
they
the
have
movie.
names.
Yeah.
See,
they don't
Lamia,
really
funny.
have names in the book.
Okay, interesting. Funny though, I noticed that her name was Lamia, which must be some sort of a lore name because
Yeah, it
remember
is.
in Jezebeth, that's what one of the sisters' name is, Lamia.
Yeah,
That terrible movie.
The Lamia or Lamia, I'm not really sure, honestly. I think I've only ever read it. Go figure. It's related to like succubi or like the myth of Lilith, the first wife of Adam. It's like those are all kind of in the same wheelhouse from what my
Gotcha.
understanding of it is.
Okay.
But yeah, in the book they just call all three of them the Witch Queen, which is a little confusing.
Okay. Well, I'm 0 for 1. Unfortunate.
All right. She smiled widely at him with white teeth and a dusky face. Her eyes were deep violet, while her ears were the ears of a cat, gently curved and dusted with fine, dark fur. I wish everyone could see your face right now, because there are no characters in this movie with cat ears.
No. I mean, boy, this could be his mom character. If she had cat ears, this could also be. It doesn't. So it's none of the human characters. There's not even that many other female characters
True.
that are. There are. There's all the witches. There's like 5 or 6 different witches or whatever. There's, Yvain. There's a handful of others, but I'll say his mom this time.
It is his mom this time.
Okay.
Yeah, she has cat ears
Interesting.
in the book, which is interesting, yes.
So yeah, they decided to go against that one.
I guess, yeah. I mean, it could have been cute.
Yeah, I'm not saying
Could have also been really weird looking,
Yeah,
but
I'm not saying it wouldn't have made you. I'm just saying, yeah.
I guess it would have depended how they decided to do that. Anyway,
Okay.
with white hairs and his thick brown beard, his nose aquiline, his eyes gray and expectant.
Oh, I mean, oh boy. The one that first comes to mind is the wall guard, wall guardian. What does nose aquiline mean?
It's when you have like a really prominent like nose with a bump.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's still of all the characters. I mean, but there's a lot of them. See, this could be any of the princes. Like,
Yeah.
they're all kind of, or the king. I'm gonna go with the king.
It's actually Primus, the oldest prince.
Yeah, see, it could have
Yeah.
been either any of
It could have
those.
been.
That yeah, they all kind of have beards and gray, like that. Yeah.
Okay.
Ugh.
You're 1 for 3, but I think you're gonna do really good from here on out.
Okay. So the Primus one, that literally could have been like any of those people.
All right. She had her mother's gray eyes and heart-shaped face, her father's curling chestnut hair. Her lips were red and perfectly shaped. Her cheeks blushed prettily when she spoke. She was pale and utterly delightful.
That will probably be Victoria.
It is Victoria.
Okay. Boom. Easy.
In a description kind of reminiscent of some of the older fictional descriptions of women that we read.
Yeah.
I'm thinking like Sleepy Hollow.
Yeah.
And like Christmas Carol.
Yeah. Yes, male gazy.
Yes.
Yes.
He seemed to be composed of chiefly elbows and Adam's apples. His hair was the brown of sodden straw, and it stuck out at awkward angles, wet and comb it howsoever much he tried.
That'll be Tristan.
That will be Tristan.
Yeah, awkward and elbowy.
Yeah.
That's Tristan.
His black beard still coming in, tall and crow-like, eyes blank.
Say it one more time. Sorry.
His black beard still coming in, tall and crow-like, his eyes blank.
Blackbeard still coming in, tall and crow-like, his eyes blank. I'm thinking Captain Shakespeare potentially, but the blank eyes is what's throwing me. Who has blank eyes?
Don't get hung up on that detail.
All right, I'm going to say Captain Shakespeare.
That's Septimus.
Oh, see, oh, yeah, but he doesn't have a beard in the movie, does he?
Yeah, his beard's just coming in.
Is it? Oh,
I mean, it's not in the movie, but
it said tall and
crow-like.
I don't know
like
what
a
that means.
crow, like a crow bird, like the bird.
Well, yeah, how do you have a beard like a bird? I don't know what that means.
No, he was crow-like.
Oh, I thought that was a modifier of his beard. I was like, tall and crow-like beard. Well, you said the beard just coming in, tall and crow-like.
That was my bad.
The way you enunciated that made me,
the
way you inflected that made me feel like those were descriptors of the beard, and I was like, what does that mean? I don't know because then when you said tall, I was like, okay. Tall, yeah, that makes more sense now in retrospect. Mm-hmm. Separating that out.
All right, there's one more, and you're definitely going to get this right.
Okay.
Her eyes were red and raw. Her hair was so fair it was almost white, and her dress was of blue silk which shimmered in the candlelight. She glittered as she sat there. Well,
I would imagine that's when the witch turns the goat dude into a woman. That's a vein.
Yeah, that's a vein.
Yeah. All right. I don't remember how many I got right. Like half. Not great.
Yeah, it was half-ish.
But whatever. No, I did okay. Those are interesting. A lot of different ones there. Let's move on to Was That in the Book?
Nicholas Flamel is the only known maker of the Philosopher's Stone.
The what?
Honestly, don't you two read?
All right. First question. Is Tristan the result of a one-night stand between a human and a princess? Now, clearly the princess is a character, but is she the princess, or is she just a fairy folk? Cat folk?
No, she's the same character.
Same character?
Yeah.
Okay, so, and he is that.
Yes.
It's like a one-night stand between his dad and... Interesting.
Very risque.
Very risque. All right. I didn't know if he was going to have the same, if they added that sort of royal prophecy, not prophecy, I guess, but sort of...
Lineage?
Yeah, the royal lineage or not. So in the movie, all of the sons of the king it's apparently a thing within this royal line, for all of the sons to just murder each other until there's one left, so that when their dad dies, they can take the throne. Mm-hmm. And in fact, the king, as he's dying, is very upset that his sons have not murdered each other.
Yes.
So first off, is that a thing in the book? They're like murdering each other to get the throne?
Yes, the brothers murdering each other to ascend to the throne is the basic premise of their storyline.
Okay. And then following on to that, does the king trick one of his sons to his death?
No.
In the book.
That scene where Septimus pushes Secundus out of the window is not in the book.
So in the movie, the king's like, "Oh, why don't you go look out the balcony over there? Just go look." And then the other guy, and then he's like nods to the other son, and he pushes him out the window and kills him. Which I thought was interesting, that the king is actively participating in the murder of his sons, but
he doesn't seem like the best dad.
No, honestly, seems pretty terrible. Pretty terrible. Next question. Is the old man wall guardian a secret ninja?
So this element isn't in the book at all.
Okay.
There's
the wall guardian
no
guy?
specific wall guardian. Different villagers just take turns on guard duty.
Oh, okay. So in this movie, there is an old man who protects the hole in the fence, the wall, to keep people from going through. And when Tristan tries to go in, he like karate flips over the wall and smacks him, and surprisingly spry for his old age. And I also found out that's the actor who plays Grandpa Joe in the Tim Burton Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
Really?
That's that actor. Yeah, he died in like 2012 or something. But anyways, so no secret guardian wall ninja.
No.
Shucks. I mean, I get why they did it in the movie. It's a little silly. I get they just needed a reason for Tristan to take the candle.
Yeah.
Instead of just walking through the wall and wandering around forever. Like, he just goes home. All right. Does Tristan kidnap Evane, the star, and try to take her back to... I'm assuming this is in the movie. Or in the book, that he just kidnaps her and is like, nope, taking you back. You're a gift now, person thing. Does he do that?
Yeah, that's the basic premise.
That's a rough first character trait for Tristan, is to be like, yep, no, you're coming with, I'm going to tie you up. You're coming with me. It's rough.
It's pretty rough.
It's pretty rough. Well, okay. I figured that was still the same essential premise.
Yeah.
Does the witch go around, the main witch, which you said is just called like the...
Yeah, they just refer to
Something
it as
witch.
the Witch Queen.
Witch Queen. Does she get around on a goat-drawn chariot?
She does.
Sweet. Does she turn a person into a goat?
Yes, she does.
Okay. Nice. Does she turn a goat into a person?
Yes.
All right. There was some bonus questions that I didn't have there. Do all the ghosts of the dead brothers, the dead princes that after they die, do they all hang around like a Greek chorus?
They do.
They do, okay.
They're a lot less entertaining in the book, but
Yes.
they do function as a Greek chorus.
Okay, because I was like, yeah, they all kind of, in the movie, they all kind of hang around and chime in and sort of, what's the word? Mock the living characters and deride them for their silly decisions.
They provide some commentary.
Yeah, provide some. They're a Greek chorus. But yeah, okay, cool. I was figuring that was a book feature, but I wasn't sure. Do the people of Stormhold or the creatures of whatever they so we see Primus get his throat slit in a bathtub in the movie. And they have blue blood. Is that...
That detail is not in the book.
Okay.
And I actually love that detail because you interpreted it as everyone from Stormhold. I always interpreted it as he had blue blood because he's a blue blood. Because he's royal.
Oh, interesting.
So that's like a detail that I love because I love that kind of thing.
Oh, I could see. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. I assumed that they did it because for couple reasons. One, they could get away with a PG-13 rating still by having that. I would imagine that's part of it. Is that they don't actually show it; they just show the aftermath, and he's just like blue.
Right, it
blood.
looks like ink.
It looks like ink or something, yeah, or like blue Kool-Aid. But so they can get around ratings by not having it be actual blood, and again, that might have bumped it to like an R or something had they.
Yeah.
It might even be PG, and
it's PG-13.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I figured, but so they can do that, and then also it's easy to explain away by just saying, well, they're magic. Yeah, they have blue blood.
Fairyland creatures. Yeah.
I gotta check. I think I actually saw a note about this when I was doing research for the prequel, and it was like in a spoiler section and I didn't read it because I remember seeing something about blue blood at one point. So I'm gonna see if I can find that, and you can post about it on social media if I figure out the answer. Is Captain Shakespeare the fabulous pirate in the book?
There is a pirate captain in the book, but he's just a regular old sea sky captain.
So that is completely...
Yeah, his whole character, as we see him in the movie, is a movie
Interesting.
Fabrication.
We have stuff to talk about with that.
Yeah.
But I remember the first time we watched this, that caught me so by surprise, and I thought it was so delightful.
Yeah, no one I have ever shown this movie to is expecting that.
No, it comes out of nowhere. It's in watching it back, it's a little. It's got some problematic elements to it.
Yeah.
It's definitely dated. I think it's definitely not malicious. In fact, I think it's trying to be progressive, but it's still a little.
There are bits that have not aged well.
Have not aged as well, yeah. Do those said pirates, catch lightning and bottle it and sell it?
Yes, they do.
They're lightning farmers?
Yes.
Cool.
Well, they call them lightning fishers.
Fishers, yeah, that makes more sense. Yeah. Because they do have like big nets that they drag to catch. I thought that was really cool in the movie, and I'm sure we'll talk about it. But the way that they fly through storms and they have these big metal nets out to the side that channel the lightning down.
It's a cool like fantasy detail because it feels totally plausible.
Like it's nonsense, but it feels totally like that's how that would work. That's how you do that if you had a that's how you do that if you were trying to catch lightning on a pirate boat in the sky. So this is a no, because my question here was, does a pirate crew discover Shakespeare's secret life and decide that they're all cool with it and like behind him because he's still their captain? So obviously with him
that's not an element.
It's not an element in the book. So interesting. I'm interested to talk about that more. Does Tristan get turned into a mouse, and does Yvain confess her love to him as a mouse?
He does get turned into a mouse, but Yvain does not make a beautiful speech about loving him at that time.
Oh,
I know,
because I thought that's a fun moment in the movie. Because they every reverse shot to just the mouse sitting there is hilarious, and it slightly undercuts it, but without actually undercutting it. It's great.
The mouse was so attentive.
Yeah, the mouse was really
he was
really
a very good mouse.
Yeah,
a good boy.
So this is a weird thing, and I'm sure we'll talk about this more, but does Tristan just not wake up so at the end of the movie, they've confessed their love, they've kissed, they've spent the night together, and Tristan gets up to go back to the human world to basically tell them, hey, I'm out. I found my true love in over the wall, and I'm going over there to stay with her. But he doesn't just tell her that.
Yeah.
And he's going to write her a note, but he can't find a piece of paper. So he tells like the guy who works at the hotel they're staying at, tell her this. And he does a terrible job relaying the information because he's a bum. But so the whole big climax of this movie is based around her getting up to go find him or figure out what's going on.
This is what kicks everything off.
This is what kicks off her getting caught by the witch and everything kind of happening. Is like the world's dumbest mistake. And again, it's not... I mean, characters can be dumb. Like, that can happen. It just feels really weird. It
feels like a bit of a stretch.
Yeah.
And they needed that conceit.
Yeah.
They needed him to leave and her to not know where he went.
Yeah.
Or her to try to follow him for some reason.
Yeah, figure out where he went or be worried he left her or something.
I agree, it's not one of the stronger moments in the movie. But since the rest of your questions are about the climax of the story, I want to just do this here.
Okay.
Because the endings of the book and the movie are not at all the same.
Okay.
So the climax, and I say that with like air quotes around it, in the book is kind of anticlimactic.
Okay.
Una gets out of her servitude essentially by chance.
Una being his mom?
Yes, his mom.
Because she's enslaved by another witch, basically.
Yeah, so that witch doesn't die. But that frees his mom up to seek out Tristan and let him know that he's now the Lord of Stormhold. Meanwhile, because Yvain has given her heart, aka fallen in love with Tristan, the Witch Queen, like, forgets that she wanted the heart to begin with because Yvain no longer possesses it. I'm going to talk more about that later.
Yeah.
I want to just read a brief passage from the book because I feel like no matter what I say, I'm going to do a bad job of explaining what this is.
Okay.
And people are going to be like, that's not possibly what happened. And I'm going to be like, oh, but it really is what happened.
Okay.
All right. So this is the Witch Queen. This is Michelle Pfeiffer's character talking. So what I want to know is why it is that I can no longer find you in my mind. You're still there, but you're like a ghost, a will-o'-the-wisp. Not long ago you burned, your heart burned, in my mind like silver fire. But after that night in the inn, it became patchy and dim, and now it is not there at all. Yvain realized that she felt nothing but pity for the creature who wanted her dead, so she said, Could it be that the heart you seek is no longer my own? The old woman coughed. Her frame shook and spasmed with the retching effort of it. The star waited for her to be done, and then she said, I have given my heart to another.
Interesting.
And then Yvain just, walks away from her, and that's how the story ends. The Witch Queen lives on.
I have to say, I think I prefer the movie version, but we'll talk about it more later.
So it wraps up very matter-of-factly, a lot by chance. It's very fairy tale.
Yeah.
And then the climax in the movie, on the other hand, is a production with a capital P.
Right, yeah, it's the big action.
Yeah, there are multiple fights, including a voodoo zombie fight. People die in very gruesome ways.
Yeah.
The villain does an about-face twice and then gets blown up.
Yeah.
It's very Hollywood.
Yes. All right, well then I'll abandon the rest of my questions here because they're all about that. I do have one. Does Tristan, because this is post the big action scene, does Tristan become the king?
Yes, he does become the Lord of Stormhold. Although not right away, he and Yvain travel around the land of Fairy first, exploring.
Oh, okay.
And his mother rules as regent while he's doing that.
Gotcha. And then finally, and I assume not because this isn't a thing, but is Humphrey gay for Captain Shakespeare?
No.
Oh.
Humphrey's not in the book either.
Oh, okay. So she doesn't have another suitor?
She does, but it's not she marries an old rich guy in the book, which also makes a lot of sense.
Yep. All right. Well, that was all I had for Was That in the Book. I had a lot more, but since none of that stuff from the final sequence, like you said, all the stuff you kind of mentioned, the sword fights,
you had 5 questions, so I wanted to kind of head you off.
Let's head that off. We got a long episode anyways. We don't need to get bogged down with just simple no's. Let's move on to Lost in Adaptation.
Just show me the way to get out of here, and I'll be on my way.
Is it lost?
Yes, and I want to get unlost as soon as possible.
All right, first question for this. What happened with the stone? I found this a little confusing in the movie. The king is whichever of you can restore the ruby will become king. And he shoots it into space, and it explodes. I guess it hits a star or something, because that's what she says. She goes, I got this thing hit me and knocked me out of the sky. Why did he shoot it in space? What was his plan? What does he mean by restore it?
Okay.
Is this any of this explained?
Right. So a couple things here. So in the book, the necklace it's a topaz. Okay. It's not a ruby. The whole thing with restoring the color to the ruby, I'm pretty sure was just they wanted a visual element to it for the movie, so that when he picked it up and the color came back, kids in the audience could be oh.
Yeah.
So in the book, the idea with the necklace is that they say it possesses the power of Stormhold.
Okay.
So in order to be the king or the lord or whatever, you have to have this necklace.
Okay.
So since he still has multiple sons alive, he sends it out so that they have to go on a quest to get
find
it, essentially.
Right? And, claim it and pull the sword out of the stone or whatever. Sure, okay.
When he sends it off, it plays out pretty similarly in the book, so I'm not going to be much help there. There's no additional implication that he intended to knock a star out of the heavens.
Right. I guess my question was why, if he's... The thing that was confusing to me was, I get, sending it out somewhere, to the highest mountain, guarded by a dragon, whatever, something like that, where they have to go find it. But the thing that was weird to me is, why did he shoot it up into space? They can't go up into space. What if it hadn't hit a star? What would have happened? That was my confusion in that moment. Was what would have happened if it hadn't hit a star? Where was it going?
Maybe it was just going to go up real high and fall back down.
Maybe. Sure, maybe. But that was what was confusing to me, and I was wondering if so it doesn't sound like there's much extra...
No, not much.
With that, at least. I mean, yeah. Like I said, that's kind of what I figured. Send them on a quest to, they have to have the strength to claim the necklace, and whichever one gets it is the king or whatever.
Yeah,
sure.
They have to be cunning enough to be able to find it or whatever.
Sure. It's just what happens after that is what confused me, and I'm still a little confused. But all All right, my next question pertains mostly to the movie. Probably is, and I felt like this was even more shortcutted than I remembered it being in the movie the first time I watched it. Is they get grabbed by the pirates out of the sky. They're like on a cloud because they take a candle and they end up in the sky, and the pirates nab them in a net and are like interrogating them, and Captain Shakespeare's interrogating them, and then they say he says he's from Tristan says he's from England or Wall or whatever, and he goes, what did you say? And he acts like he's gonna kill him, and then he throws a dummy off the side, and then it cuts, and all the crew thinks he killed him. And then it cuts into his cabin, and actually he's going to help him. He likes him. And the only implication of why he's like... So his whole character in the movie is that he's not actually this ruthless cutthroat. It's just what the line of work he got into because of his dad. It's not what he's passionate about. He doesn't actually like hurting people. He doesn't do... It's all just an act. But I was still a little confused at why he's just like... helping them, or like why he like decides like, I'm is it because he's interested in the man's world, in human world, or what?
Oh, he's the Little Mermaid.
Is that what it is? Like,
okay, so
I was just a little confused at what exactly made him decide to help them. And is it just because he's because he is a nice guy?
Yeah, I mean, I think the reality is that he's just like a nice guy.
Okay.
And I mean, we had that initial reason for saving them is because, like you said, Tristan mentions they're from Wall and he's fascinated with England. But I don't think he would have actually harmed or killed them regardless.
That's what I mean.
Like,
yeah,
that's kind of the vibe that I
right.
get.
That's
like,
what it seems like. Yeah, because
yeah,
he says he's like never killed anybody. Like he says,
Yeah.
It's all based on reputation. I've never had to spill a drop of blood or whatever.
Yeah, and I mean, then all the scenes later really bring into question whether or not the crew actually thinks he flung him over the side, because they're surely not fooled by this.
Yeah, they all
right?
say they know that they're,
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. It was a little confusing to me, but
and there's not a lot of expansion on this in the book. They never threaten them in the book.
Okay.
They just help them.
They just kind of grab them and they're like, "Hey, what's up?" Yeah.
In the book, there's also a couple mentions of a group called the Fellowship of the Castle, which we're told is a group that wants to work towards Tristan's safe return to Wall. But that element isn't really expanded on ever. It's possibly it's a reference to something mentioned in the Tale of Sir Lancelot from Arthurian legend. But aside from telling us that it exists and that its members supposedly want Tristan safely back in Wall, the book does not go into detail on this element.
Okay.
Which is a little confusing.
Yeah. Yeah, a little bit. Okay, yeah, I was just a little like, what? He's just a nice guy. All right, I guess that's it. So, just following on to that, how long are they on Shakespeare's ship?
Well, in the book, they're on board the ship for like several weeks.
Okay, but in the movie, it can't be that long.
No. So I sat and I figured this out when I answered this question for you. When Tristan strikes his deal with Victoria, she says that it's 1 week until her birthday.
Yeah.
He spends the night in the crater then with Yvain, and they travel all the next day. And then the next night, there's when they have the run-in at the inn, and they end up on the ship. Because we don't ever see them sleep in between those two nights. Yeah. When they leave the ship, Yvain mentions that Victoria's birthday is the next day.
Yeah.
So they were on board the ship like 5-6 days at the most.
At most, but yeah, probably like 4 or 5 days.
Unless we're supposed to assume that like time runs differently there.
And that very well could be.
Yeah.
That time it's not a 1-to-1.
Yeah, like they were only on board for a couple days, but really it was like 6 months or something.
Or like they were on board. Yeah, like they were on board for several weeks.
Yeah.
Like you said in the book, but only 2 days passed in the human world or whatever. And I was actually wondering if it isn't something like that, which would make the most sense, because otherwise he learns how to sword fight in like 2 or 3 days.
I'm willing to potentially give a slight pass on that, though, because they do say when he tries to fight Humphrey that they did it in school and he was
took
just
fencing.
shit at it.
He was just bad at it. So he knows a little bit.
So he probably knows like the basics.
Yeah, and it was more so less that he was terrible at it probably, and that he was just lacked confidence and that sort of thing. And then like so I can buy that, but it would make more sense to me if they were just there on it because also the way the montage works, it makes it feel like they're on the ship
it
for
makes
like
it feel like a long time,
for weeks or something.
Yeah.
You know, I was like, oh, they're on here for like a month or two or so. You know, like they're on here for a while.
And I love that montage because I think it's so much fun.
Yeah,
but the timing of it is vague at best.
Yeah, it's great. And so I think what makes sense and what headcanon for me that works is that time moves differently. And I'm totally sure, like, whatever, like, that's a totally reasonable, fantasy.
Yeah, that's like, totally supported by the genre of fantasy.
Yeah. It's a little contradicted by the end when they're running from opposite sides of the wall.
Yeah.
Like when Tristan's over on the other side and then he comes back and then she has just been taken. Like that's a little bit, but we'll let that go and say that it's basically the case. And then finally, so this isn't in the book.
This isn't going to be in the book, but I want to talk about it.
Let's talk about it because this is very confusing to me. So at the end of the movie, the queen is going to kill and eat. So a lot of stuff has happened. All of the princes are dead. It's just Tristan and Yvain, and his mom, or Tristan's mom is out. Yeah, she's hiding or whatever. She's there. She's alive still. But both of the other witches of the three witches, the three evil witches, the two other ones are dead. It's just Michelle Pfeiffer's character.
Michelle Pfeiffer and Tristan and Yvain.
And Yvain's tied down to the thing, and Tristan's standing there, and he loses a sword fight to her because apparently she's like a knife master, which I don't think they needed to do that.
She is really old.
Sure. Yeah, she had time, I guess. Sure. So they fight, and he loses, and she's rearing back because he can't do anything, and you think she's going to kill him. And then she has this moment where she looks and sees her dead sisters. We see from her perspective a shot of her looking and seeing them. And she screams, and she slices and cuts Yvain free.
Yes.
And doesn't kill them. And she says, oh, what's the point? Yeah. My sisters are dead. Why? I don't even care if I live forever now because I lost my sisters. And they're like, okay. And then they leave. They start to leave. They
try to leave. And then she does another about face.
She's sobbing, and then that turns into an evil laugh.
Yeah.
And she says, nope, never mind. I'm going to kill you now. And I don't understand what that's about.
Yeah. I did want to talk about this because I do think it's easily the movie's weakest moment.
It just doesn't make any sense.
But I know why they did it. I know why. They started the scene with Yvain strapped down to the table and they needed a way to get her up.
Well, it's so easy to just have Tristan cut her free at some point.
Well, that's
he has
why
a sword.
I really have to wonder why they went with that specific way because it seems like to me that would be the more obvious answer. Or like even having her like fake dead would make a little more sense than what they did.
What do you
like having the witch like fake that she was dead and then being like, haha. Would even, I think, make a little more sense than what they went with.
Yeah, and so my only other thought, but they don't say this, is that, and it doesn't make sense because then she tells them that she's going to kill him. So, like, my only thought was like, okay, maybe she's going to let her free so that Yvain gets happy.
Yeah.
And it makes her glow, because that's one of the big things is, like, the heart's better.
If she's glowing
If she's, like, happy and glowing, then it's like better. It's like, you don't want to scare the meat before you like butcher the animal or whatever. It's kind of the idea.
Right.
And so it's like, if that was what it was, sure. But she then like, she goes on to like break all the mirrors and scare the shit out of them. And she's not glowing at that. Like she's not, there's not even a moment where like she tries, like if she's like, okay, I'm going to let you go. And then they hug and she's so happy. And then she comes up to try to kill her right in that moment. That would kind of, if she tries to like sneak up and stab her while she's like hugging Tristan and like happy or something, that would make sense. But it made literally no sense. It felt like a super weird oversight. There's a couple of those in this movie that, as much as I enjoy this movie overall and as a thing, has some weird moments of like what happened here? Like this got reshot and messed up or something.
Yeah, there are definitely some weird script moments. That's kind of like did you try everything else and it really didn't work?
Yeah.
Like, why did you go with this?
Yeah. It's very strange. It just makes sense to me. Leave her tied to the chair, and at some point during that fight, while her and Tristan are fighting, he swings around and cuts her free.
Yeah.
And then, and then maybe he loses, and in that moment, he loses. He doesn't have a sword anymore. They stumble down the thing, and then at this moment, she knows she's won, and she starts fucking with him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you can do the whole mirrors exploding thing. You can do, or the windows explode. You can do everything you did. But you just don't have this weird, like, I'm going to let you go. What is the point? Never mind. I'm not going to let you go. I was lying. It was all a ruse for no reason.
I don't know, man.
It's so weird.
I don't know.
Weird. If anybody listening understands what was going on there, because like I said, the only way I could try to make it work was that she was trying to, like, make her happy, but it doesn't add up because then she immediately tries to kill him again.
No, I love this movie, but that is by far just one of the weakest,
it's so weird,
most nonsensical moments
it's so weird
in the whole movie. And a lot of the stuff that happens, I'm willing to let slide.
Yeah. It's a fairy tale.
It's genre conventions, and it's funny and it's silly, and I'm willing to let a lot of stuff slide. But that moment is really just, it's like, what were you thinking?
What was why? What's going on? Yeah. Well, and it's weird too because here's the thing: if I don't want to beleaguer this too much, but like if she was faking it the whole time, why do we get a perspective shot of her seeing her dead sisters?
Yeah, I don't know.
Because that's weird. You know what I mean? Like if she was gonna do that, and it's the thing I said, where it's and I guess they just show us a perspective to remind us that her sisters are dead, to make us believe.
To remind us.
And to make us believe for a minute her weird turn here. But it's just like she wouldn't, but we see it from a perspective shot from like, it's her looking, and she wouldn't, if she doesn't care, why are we seeing her look at him? Because she wouldn't be looking at him because she wouldn't care. It's very strange. I don't know. It's all very strange. And again, I don't want to... We've already talked about it at length. So let's move on to better in the book.
You like to read?
Oh, yes. I love to read.
What do you like to read?
Everything.
So we actually, in the book, spend a lot more time with Tristan's dad, Dunstan.
Oh, yeah.
Before we get to the story proper. And I want to talk about that a little bit later in my like general notes, because I'm a little torn on the merits of how the book starts versus how the movie starts. But one thing that doesn't make it into the movie that I liked in the book was that he does get married and they have a daughter, and Tristan just assumes that his sister's mother is also his mother, and never really occurs to him to take into account that his sister is only 6 months younger than him.
Yep. I mean, sex ed in in whatever a 17th century, 18th century England, probably not the best. So he might not be exactly sure how long that takes, but
the movie kind of makes Victoria into like a one-dimensional mean girl.
Yeah.
And she's not.
I don't think she. I disagree.
Do you disagree?
I disagree that the movie does that. I thought you said the book did that. In the movie, I think she's actually a lot. She starts that way, but then when her and him have that picnic, she comes across completely differently. She initially comes across as just sort of like.
She's a little better in the picnic scene, yeah.
Well, but that's when she's not. When her friends aren't around and when Humphrey isn't around. She's more herself, and it's just her and Tristan. You can tell she actually likes him, and that and I don't think she's lying to him necessarily. Like in that scene, in that particular scene, in the picnic scene, she seems genuine. And when she goes in, she's gonna like kiss him and stuff like that. All very much felt way not one dimensional. Like I actually completely disagree with that. I thought in the movie they did a really good job with her of making her. Sort of multifaceted, and you can tell that she's doing a different thing with different people around.
All right, I'll concede to that. I do think they made her into a little bit more of a mean girl. than she is in the book, though.
Yeah, I mean, maybe more so than in the book.
Yeah.
That's fair. I mean, that's definitely her in the first 4 scenes we see her. Or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, all the way up until the picnic scene, she is just kind of a generic, like, snobby, mean girl.
She gets him fired.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, all the way up until that scene. But then, like, she apologizes in the picnic scene, and it seems genuine.
I mean, I guess, but she doesn't take ownership for it.
Right. I'm not saying it like she's not like nice or like she's not like perfect after that. It's just there's a lot more nuance to her in that scene that and I think it's all completely and I think it's really interesting because I think it's all completely a result of the fact of she's playing a role when other people are around.
Yeah.
And whenever it's just her and Tristan, we get to see more of what she's actually like and less of the role she's playing for society and for her friends and for everybody else. And so we get to see, and I think that's really interesting. But I don't know. I actually really like her character in the movie. I think she's fascinating. Like, for how little she's in it, like, I actually think she's a really nuanced character.
All right. So... in the book, the witches live in like a little cottage hovel in the woods, but there is a grand mirror in there that you can see through. It is like more of like the grand hall that they show in the movie. And I think that's a little bit more interesting, although I get why they changed it.
Do they go through the mirror? Like, what do you mean? Like, do they ever go to the hall?
We never see them go through the mirror. We don't spend a lot of time with the witches in their house.
Yeah.
Like we do in the movie. A little bit. But to me, there was like an implication that this was maybe like a doorway, or maybe that it was reflecting what was truly there or something like that. So I thought that was interesting. Although, like I said, I get why they changed it.
Yeah.
There are a lot of little moments in the book where we can see that Tristan actually belongs in Fairy and Stormhold. The food doesn't bother him, which is a big thing.
Yeah, to be fair, I'm sorry. I mean, like, Stormhold, I guess, is like the castle.
Stormhold is technically the castle, yeah.
It's kind of on the map. I do remember them calling it Fairy in the movie a couple times, but they also seems like they refer to it as Stormhold. And on the map, it just says Stormhold.
Yeah, it just says
like.
Stormhold.
So that's why I was calling it. But yeah, it is Fairy.
Yeah,
Sorry. Yeah.
So there are the more moments like that. Like the food doesn't bother him, like I said, and it's like a big thing in fairy lore is that if you're mortal, you can't eat fairy food.
Gotcha.
And there's this whole thing where he gets into fairy and he just has this like innate sense of where things are. He's never been there, but he's like, oh yeah, that's that way, and people are like, how did you know that? So that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
There is a cool moment for Primus where he tricks Septimus into thinking that he's boarded a ship and like tricks him into getting on the ship too, but then he's not actually on the ship. Plays him.
All right. Primus doesn't really get any...
Yeah, Primus doesn't really get any super interesting moments in this.
He just kind of runs and then gets his neck slit.
Yeah. This is a big one. When Tristan leaves Yvain by the tree to go and get supplies. In the movie, he chains her to the tree.
Yes.
In the book, he opts not to do this.
That's nice.
Yeah.
That would have been good. I wish that would have happened in the movie. Because that's another one of those, oof. All right.
That's not a great look for him.
No.
The trees also talk in the book, which I miss a little bit.
Yeah.
In the movie.
Yeah, because the trees, in that moment where they tell him that Yvain's in trouble, that's the other stars talking to him.
Yeah, it's the other stars. But the trees also talk about it in the book. There's something that the movie left out. When Primus, rather, is killed by Lamia, that leaves Septimus honor-bound to seek vengeance on her, which I thought would have been an interesting added element. Yeah. Potentially more compelling than having him just, like, chase after Yvain because he decides he also wants to eat her heart.
Well, yeah. Well, but he also needs the necklace, and she has the necklace. But yeah, he also is like, I could be king forever. So yeah.
So in the book, it creates more of like Tristan and Yvain are trying to get back to Wall, and the witch is chasing them, and Septimus is chasing the witch. Creates more of like a trail, I guess. The movie bit with Yvain shining, and like her shining blows up Michelle Pfeiffer into confetti. I don't hate the shining bits all the way through, but it is a little cheesy. And I get why someone might be put off by it.
Yeah. I don't know. I like it. And they set it up. They do rule of three it.
Yes, they do.
They do set it up where she asks him like 2 times before, like, what do stars do? And he never answers. Or he doesn't know the answer, even though it's very obvious.
They twinkle.
Fair. Yeah. Like, twinkle. There's a whole song about it, Yvain.
In the book, Tristan and Yvain's journey takes place over like 6 months.
Yeah.
I totally get why the movie would speed that up, but I always like the idea of a naturally grown relationship. Although, ironically, I buy into them being in love a little more in the movie. In my opinion, I don't think the book does a super great job of selling that aspect of their relationship.
Yeah.
That, like, they fall in love. Lamia plays herself in the book by making Ditchwater Sal unable to perceive Yvain.
Ditchwater Sal is the one who has...
Yeah, the redheaded witch.
Yeah. Who has Tristan's mom.
Yes.
Yeah.
So when she is traveling with Tristan as a dormouse and Yvain, but she doesn't know that Yvain's there, she passes by the witch queen who asks her who she has in her cart and, like, magic forces her to tell the truth.
Yeah.
Except she doesn't know that Yvain's there.
Yeah.
So Lamia plays herself.
That's interesting.
I mentioned that the way Una escapes from her servitude to Ditchwater Sal is different in the book. I like the way it ends up in the movie. I think the book is more fairy tale-ish and potentially more interesting than just having her, like, get her head blown off.
Yeah.
So in the book, she'll be free from the enchantment when the moon loses her daughter and 2 Mondays come together in the same week.
Oh.
So when Yvain falls out of the sky, that's the moon losing her daughter. Because the premise is that the stars are the daughters of the moon. And then Victoria is marrying a man named Mr. Monday that week. So 2 Mondays are coming together in the same week. So that breaks the enchantment and she's able to leave her servitude.
Yeah, that would have been tough to explain in the movie.
Definitely.
And set up. Because then, you have to have a whole different thing. Humphrey Monday and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But yes, it is a more fairy tale kind of thing than a witch getting her head blown off by another witch. Although that's pretty sweet in the movie. All right, that was it for Better in the Book. Let's talk about what's better in the movie.
My life has taught me one lesson, Hugo, and not the one I thought it would. Happy endings only happen in the movies.
Okay, so right off the bat, in the book, Tristan's name is Tristran.
Tristran?
Tristran. There's an extra R in it. I can barely say it. You'll get to hear me stumble around it during my Let Me Sum Up.
Tristran. That's terrible.
So I don't really want to hear everybody in the movie stumble over that. No. So top-notch, great choice, makes a world of difference.
Yeah, that's awful. Tristan's so much better. Although they do... Seems like they go back and forth a bit between Tristane and Tristan, but sure. Still better.
I love the addition of Humphrey.
Yeah.
I thought he was a good kind of mini foil to Tristan.
And played expertly by Henry Cavill.
Yes.
Who was perfectly cast as that. This has got to be one of his earlier roles,
gross little mustache.
This is definitely one of his earlier roles.
Yeah.
Does he play... Because he absolutely could have. I know I never saw the live action. He doesn't play Gaston in the live action Beauty and the Beast, does he?
That's somebody else.
He could have.
Yeah, he could have. Totally.
He totally could have. I remember seeing the guy they got to do it, and he looks... The guy they got looks good, but Henry Cavill could have done it.
One of my favorite lines from the movie that's not in the book, when Tristan's dad says to him, "Every boy I ever admired when I was a schoolboy has led an unremarkable life. So you don't fit in with the popular crowd." I take that as a very good sign.
Yeah.
Me to my future kids.
Yeah.
The book has this random character who's described as a small, hairy creature who helps Tristan along. He's actually the one that Tristan gets the Babylon candle from in the book.
Not his dad.
No, not his dad. And he is also a member of this Fellowship of the Castle thing, which was so underdeveloped in the book, and cutting it, I think, was a really good choice. Because in my opinion, it didn't need to be in the book either. So I don't miss that guy. I don't really think he was necessary.
Yeah.
He's just kind of in the very beginning, and he never shows up again.
Gotcha.
I thought that showing Septimus push Secundus out of the window, immediately followed by having him show up as a ghost, was a great way to illustrate that dynamic and to explain who the ghosts are and why they're there.
Yes.
I also think the ghosts function in a more interesting manner in the movie. They're a more consistent and a funnier Greek chorus than they are in the book. I also love the little ways that the movie shows Lamia's vanity. Mm-hmm. How she freaks out every time she sees another sign of aging.
Yeah.
The Babylon candle works differently in the book than it does in the movie. And I like both. In the book, they work more like 7 League Boots. So he lights the candle and then he takes a step, and that one step takes him 7 leagues or whatever.
Yeah.
Which is interesting, and it's definitely fairy tale inspired. But I think the way that the movie does it makes more sense for eventually putting them up in the clouds.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because they do end up on a cloud in the book, but it doesn't really explain how. I'm like, I guess maybe if they jumped.
Yeah.
But it doesn't say that they jumped, so I'm kind of like, all right.
Yeah.
You guys just walked onto a cloud. Okay.
It's also a great moment in the movie, which I don't know if it's in the book or not. I should have asked about this, but I think it's a super clever, fun moment in the movie when they're in the inn and the witch is bearing down on them to kill them. Mm-hmm. And she's burning everything down. And so he's like, "Oh, I got this candle." He sticks his hand in the fire. Is that in the book?
That actually does happen in the book. Yeah,
I thought that was really clever. That's a cool little moment.
Yeah. The scene where Septimus poisons the bishop was a movie ad.
I was going to ask. I almost asked about that, but that's a fun scene.
Yeah. I love the way they all look at each other.
Yeah, they're like, they do. It's a little.
It's a little comedic moment.
It's a Mexican standoff. I'm sure there's a better, less offensive phrase for that, but and they even do the Western eyes things.
Yeah,
where they're, looking at the good, the bad, and the ugly, where they're the close-ups of the eyes looking at each other and everything. It also reminded me, particularly because the one actor is a guy from Spaced. It reminded me, that scene in particular reminded me of a scene from Spaced or something, or from something Edgar Wright did. There's a lot in this movie that felt like Edgar Wright was a consulting something, and now he's not anywhere in the credits, but there's enough of the actors that he uses that show up in this movie. There's 3 or 4 of them.
I wonder if him and Matthew Vaughn are friends.
I'm sure they are, probably.
Because I feel like they probably get together and talk about their projects and bounce ideas off of each other. Yeah.
And it's funny, is that as much as I enjoy this movie, and I think Matthew Vaughn's a great director, I think he did a really good job. I'd be really interested to see, because I don't think there's anybody better than Edgar Wright, and I think some of those weird little directorial inconsistencies of what's going on with this character here and plot things, I don't think Edgar Wright would have let fly, because those things just don't happen in his movies. And I would have been really interested to see him take a pass at this movie.
He does run a very tight ship.
He has a vision, and at least in all of the movies that he does, he knows what he wants.
A very tight script.
Yes, and he has everything so meticulously planned out. Whenever you see, or do any reading or listen to him talk about how he does his movies, that I don't think those weird, what's going on here would have happened if he was running the show. Again, Matthew Vaughn's a great director, and I think this is a very, very good movie. It's just those little things I think would have been interested to see. Then again, I think Edgar Wright should direct every movie, so that's not really mean anything.
Fair. There's a whole scene in the book where Tristan and Yvain watch a lion and a unicorn do battle, which doesn't really like factor in anything and doesn't really go anywhere. So I think it was a good idea to cut that probably.
Yeah.
Septimus is like 1,000,000 times more interesting in the movie than he is in the book.
Okay.
In the book, he just kind of like he's still murderous, but he's not like interesting about it. Yeah. If you know what I mean.
Yeah. Well, he has some great moments. The moment with the casting lots or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's not in the book.
It's not. That's a great scene where he has this soothsayer there throwing is that what it is? Runes or whatever. And he's asking him questions, and he's like, throw him high this time, and he throws him up, and he goes, "You working for my brother?" And they land and say yes, and he stabs him. Like, it's a great little scene, and just executed flawlessly. But yeah, so I can see adding some of those little, especially if that's a movie ad. That's the scene that's like the first scene with him where you're like, this guy's cool.
Yeah,
like
no, he's a good villain. He's a really cool character in the movie.
I mean, and played brilliantly by Mark Strong, who also shows up in a lot of Matthew Vaughn movies. Yeah. He is the villain in... He's not always the villain. He's the villain in Kick-Ass, I'm like 99% sure. And he's Q. He's one of the agents in Kingsman. He's like... Oh, yeah. The guy on the plane. Yeah. He's like their Q, kind of, to some extent. Yeah. He's just another agent. Very
well cast in this film. Yeah. He looks Crow-like.
Yep.
I thought the movie made the good decision to just have Lamia fix Yvain's leg and eliminate that element altogether, so we don't have to keep bothering with it, because it's not very important plot-wise moving forward.
I forgot. It's so not important that even in the movie, I forgot that her leg was messed up until she fixes it in the tub, and I was like, oh, that's right.
Yeah, they don't really make much of it in the movie. There's more made of it in the book.
Yeah.
But, like, in the book, as soon as they get out of that situation, they're on board the ship, and they stay there long enough for her leg to heal. So that's kind of just that in the book. Like, and that ends up being a thing that's just not important moving forward with the story. I love the detail of Primus's blood being blue, as I mentioned. I will fight anyone who thinks that Captain Shakespeare is better in the book than in the movie. It is dated, but I think he's also a great character. Yeah. There's a lot of fun moments. Yeah. And in the book, his character is just kind of nothing.
Yeah.
So.
I like I said, it's dated, but it's fun.
Love the sword fighting ship montage. Love that. Okay, let's talk about the climax a little bit more. I want to put a disclaimer out because I feel like this is probably the most contentious thing with this adaptation. I totally get why you might not like the climax of this movie, because it is cheesy and it's loud and it's Hollywood and there are parts of it that don't make sense.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. The book's ending is a very fairy tale and it wouldn't work for a movie. No. Movies need production endings, and they need to actually tie up loose ends, or the audience isn't going to feel satisfied. And for me, the movie ending works better. I think it's more engaging, and I think it's more satisfying. But again, I 100% understand why someone might not care for it, because it is a major, major shift from what happens in the book.
Yeah. Fair enough. I like it. So... Not all of it, as we discussed, but most of it. All right, let's talk about what the movie nailed.
As I expected, practically perfect in every way.
This movie is so well cast.
Yeah.
Like, absurdly well cast.
So many people that I didn't even realize were from things that I knew. Mm-hmm. Even the first time that I watched it. Mainly one person in that, but then there was other people that I've seen in stuff since then that I was like, oh, that's that person. Like one of the lesser brothers who's dead the whole time, the frozen one. It looks like he's frozen.
Yeah, it does look like he's frozen.
That guy is the weird, creepy brother of Liv Tyler's character in Harlots.
Oh, I
watched
never would
Harlots,
have realized that.
In the most recent season of Harlots, Liv Tyler's brother's character
is like pure evil.
Yeah, he's like the head, one of the heads of like this weird evil like brotherly order thing. But that actor is that, and he's a weird looking. He's a very distinct looking person. He has a very interesting face shape.
Yeah.
Sort of ratty, for lack of a better word, or something. And I don't mean that. It was just like something about his eyes, and anyways, like I recognize that guy. And then one of the other brothers, who is alive and dies at the poisoning scene, is an actor who's in a bunch of Edgar Wright stuff, and primarily, if you've watched the TV show Space, which is one of Edgar Wright's first things, it's with Simon Pegg and Nick Frost in it. There was a TV show before they made all their movies, and he plays their neighbor named Brian, who's like a great character in that movie. He's this like secluded, tortured artist character. But he shows up and he plays and this is the only other thing I've seen him at other than like Edgar Wright movies and stuff. But
we highly recommend both Harlots and Spaced.
Yes, Harlots
is a Hulu original.
Yeah,
and Spaced was
BBC.
BBC.
Yeah, it's a BBC TV
was that
show.
On?
It's on. I mean, I think it's still on Netflix. We watched it on Netflix. Or it might be on Hulu. I don't know.
Hulu has a lot of BBC stuff.
Yeah,
maybe.
They might have moved around, but it was on Netflix for a long time. It might be on Hulu now. But yeah, it's Edgar Wright, Simon Pegg's stuff before they made any of their movies.
We recommend both of those things.
If you want to see, watching Spaced is one of the most fascinating experiences. If you like Edgar Wright and Simon Pegg, and if you like the Cornetto trilogy and you just didn't know about this TV show, it's so interesting watching this TV show after having watched those movies, because you can see the seeds
them, developing their
you can watch them develop their style and their comedic style, and there's jokes from those movies that they pull and they put, or from this TV show that they pull into those movies, and it's really, really interesting. But anyways, continuing.
Yeah, so the movie was well cast.
Yeah.
The initial scene between Lamia and Ditchwater Sal, where she curses her to not be able to perceive Yvain, is pretty spot on. And then the Magic Inn and her acting as the innkeeper. And then their escape from the inn is more or less, she doesn't light everything on green fire, but it more or less plays out the same way.
Yeah.
And then Ditchwater Sal not being able to perceive Yvain, and then turning Tristan into a dormouse.
Yeah.
All plays out pretty much the same way.
Well, there you go. We're almost to the final verdict. I think you can tell maybe which way Katie's leaning. I mean, it's a bit of a spoiler when we discuss the fact that this is her favorite movie. But we'll get there in a second. Before we do, we got a few odds and ends to wrap up.
This book was shelved in my library in the children's section.
Yeah, there's definitely, if it's anything like the movie...
Spoilers, this is not a kid's book.
I was about to say, if it's anything like the movie, there's definitely a lot of adult
There's
elements.
a sex scene on, page 10 in this book.
Well, there you go.
I'm wondering if I should say something.
Don't be a prude.
That's not... I mean, I want to, bring up, though, that, I wonder if it's shelved the way that it is, because I think we have a cultural bias to perceive fantasy as kid stuff.
Yeah, and especially fantasy bordering on fairy tales, which we'll discuss here in a minute. But definitely something leaning in that fairy tale realm, for sure.
Yeah.
And a lot of other Neil Gaiman books, The House... or Ocean at the End of the Lane, or whatever it's... what is it called?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, The Ocean at the End of the Lane.
That could be... That is clearly, children's literature. I would... Or in,
Are you remembering the same book? That one's pretty adult.
Is it?
It's pretty scary.
It's about, a 6-year-old girl.
It's dark.
Yeah, I think that would be more, maybe YA, but I could say that's, that could be shelved in the same place as, The Hobbit.
Yeah, maybe.
It's that 12 to 13 year, 10 to 13-year-old reading, and I think now this one I don't know because I didn't read it, but I don't know. I could see how some of other Neil Gaiman stuff, although other stuff like Sandman obviously wouldn't.
Right, he does have a lot of adult fiction.
Yeah.
American Gods, Anansi Boys. the one whose title I can never remember.
Is Good Omens?
Well, Good Omens is his collaboration with Terry Pratchett, but it is more of an adult book. Neverwhere.
It's on the back.
That's the one I can never remember. And I mean, his kids stuff is also darker. I just feel like the themes of this particular one are pretty adult.
Yeah.
For it being shelved in the children's room.
Oh, I agree. It absolutely. And again, if the movie's any inclination, it absolutely is a more adult theme. Like, there's plenty of moments and violence and sex. You know, I mean, the opening scene of this movie, or of the movie, is this chick being like, "We should go bone."
Yeah.
I mean, that's how the movie starts. It's like, come in this cart. We're gonna go bone.
How much does flour cost? Your dick.
Yeah, yep. That's how the movie starts. Like, that's not a children's story, but all right.
Speaking of the story setup, we spend a lot more time with Dunstan in the book with his dad, and the premise in the book is that you can cross over the wall like once every 9 years to go to this market. So he goes on purpose to try to find something for his lady love.
Gotcha.
Who he ends up marrying. And on the one hand, the movie like really streamlines things. We get to the story proper much more quickly without losing a lot.
Yeah.
On the other hand, I think that the book draws some really nice parallels between Dunstan and Tristan, and it provides a more interesting like background context on the relationship between Wall and Fairy.
Yeah.
So I was a little torn on that. I didn't want to put it into either better section.
Yeah.
But I did want to mention it because it's a fairly big difference.
Yeah.
Well, I fucking love the score of this film.
Yeah. No, it's great.
Also,
look up who did it.
Can we take note of the fact that when Tristan, like the exact moment that he realizes Yvain is the star, the music very softly plays Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star.
I did not notice
and it's
that.
like the most adorable thing ever.
I did not notice that.
Please notice that. The next time you watch this movie.
Speaking of, this movie also has like crazy gorgeous landscape shots.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, they filmed in what, Wales? You said, like, or something like that.
They filmed like all over Iceland and England and Scotland.
Yeah. And it shows, but like it's one of the things. So it's one of the things that they filmed in all like practical locations, and it's one of the things that really set this movie apart from something like, say, what was the one we just like Ella Enchanted. Mm-hmm. When we go on this adventure, seeing those landscapes, we get so many more wide shots of stuff happening in this movie, and not even just like gorgeous, huge landscape shots, which we get a bunch of in this movie. Like they got like, we're filming in all these cool places. We're going to give you these huge, wide, all the way down the shoreline or up on these cliffs with giant mountains in the back. Like all those are cool, but even just like little moments of like, when like the shot of the wall at the end of the movie where the cart rolls up, or the witch is coming up one way and the cart rolls up, we get one shot where it's like a wide pulled back shot where we see where the cart came from, where both the different witch carts came from. We see the hole in the wall, and we see where Tristan would be coming from, and we get a wide shot of all of that. So we now in our head are like, okay,
yeah, we can orient ourselves.
See what's happening here. Whereas if this was Ella Enchanted or like Wrinkle in Time, I feel like this would all be close-ups, and we'd only get close-ups, and I'd be like, where is anything happening? And this movie, and Matthew Vaughn's a great, he directs action very well, which is why he's done a bunch of action movies. But he knows how to block action so that it lives in your head and you can tell what's happening, while also doing really interesting, striking visual shots with it. Like this, on top of that being a shot where I get to see where everything's happening, the way the wall cuts across the middle of the frame is really interesting and visually striking. And there's a lot of stuff like that throughout the movie. They're just really cool shots. And it's like, yeah, right, great. This is how you shoot this kind of movie. Yeah. This is how you shoot an action. But the same way, like Pirates is shot that way. The first Pirates movie. Yeah. Same kind of thing. It's like, this is how you shoot and block an action film. Take note, Ella Enchanted director, whatever your name is. I forgot already.
Well, maybe there's a reason for that.
Yep.
Okay, you want to talk about some of the more unfortunate elements that did not age well?
Yeah, I got a note about one. Yeah, go for it.
So the moment with Bernard as a girl helping Yvain undress.
Yeah.
Very brief, very unfortunate.
Yeah. Yeah, they have him turn into a girl, and
he pokes his boobs.
Yeah, it's just kind of juvenile and silly.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair though, like if I got turned into a girl, I might poke my boob. Like, how would you not? You'd be like, "Well, I have boobs now. This is weird." If for no other reason than like, like, is this real life? What is happening? But yeah, it is the interactions are definitely a little.
Yeah, so that element is not great. Then do you want to talk about Captain Shakespeare?
Yeah, I had that here. Captain Shakespeare. I don't even know necessarily how to do this differently, because I think they did all of this with good intentions. It seems like it's trying to it's a send up of toxic masculinity, and you know what I mean. It's a send up of a lot of these like regressive things, but it's also within that still it's because like we said, it's very dated and it feels weird.
They think the problem with it, because you're right, it is a send up of toxic masculinity, and I'd argue
performative masculinity,
masculinity, and I would argue that this ends on a good note and it has a positive message.
Yeah, it absolutely does.
I think the issue with it is that it's aged.
It's
2007 portrayal of it's very it's very original Queer Eye for the Straight Guy kind of.
It's very and I know why they did this, because it's very like just like arch stereotypical like queerness.
Yes.
Like it's sort of undefined, like, which in its own way is kind of interesting that he's not just like he's like cross dresses, but he's also implied to be gay, because that's not necessarily, so you know what I mean, like, so it is implied that he's gay because of the whole thing with Humphrey at the end, but he also is cross dresses and he has dresses and that sort of thing, which, you know, doesn't necessarily correlate to
right.
So like they do, but it also sort of feels like just like this is what people think is gay.
Yeah.
Like,
that's
so like
the
do
thing
this.
with it.
And also having De Niro do it.
Those stereotypes.
Also having De Niro do it. Now, I get why they do it, because it's more of a surprise. It's more of a twist when you get somebody like De Niro, who's, you know, a notorious, like, he plays the big bad action. Countless times throughout the history he plays a tough guy. That's his thing.
Yes.
You know, he's Raging Bull, Goodfellas. He plays a tough guy. And so there's that twist of having him then not be that, like expecting that, getting that initially, and then taking the rug out from under you.
Yes.
It's fun, and it's what was really interesting to me the first time I watched this movie. But there's something to be said about there's a problematic casting a straight dude to just pretend to be. I don't know. Maybe it's not I don't know. It feels weird to me. But it also is the only way I think you can do that, because I don't know. It definitely just feels dated, and it feels that here's the thing. I don't know how to fix it, because I'm not exactly sure how.
I could not tell you.
But there are people that would be able to do that in a way that I think felt better, but still did the same thing.
Yeah, and that's the thing of it to me, is that I feel like if this movie were remade now, I think there's a way to still do that, but to do it better.
Yeah. I agree. I agree completely. Is that I think it could be done better, but still, because again, and we've said it all, but it's going for a good message. Yeah. And it's mostly done well. Like, it's mostly it does achieve that. It's just it's dated. Yeah. It's just that doesn't quite work quite as well. Yeah, there is a pretty overt continuity error where Lamia is younger.
She shows up in the mirror talking to her sisters, and she doesn't look nearly as decrepit.
That scene was absolutely an insert to bridge some continuity issues between figuring out, because like basically she shows up to her sisters and is like, or the other witches, and is like, "Where's she now?" And they're like, "She's going here." Yeah. And it's all done from a wide shot, so we can't see them talking. Yeah. So it's all ADR to just like them being like, "She's going here, so go there." And it's basically bridges somehow. Maybe something was cut and they needed a way to like bridge how she figures out where they're going or something. But it's absolutely inserted, and they inserted a shot of Michelle Pfeiffer from 20 minutes ago in the movie while she still wasn't losing her hair and like all old and falling apart. And they were like, "Well, hopefully nobody notices," but I noticed that. I don't know if I noticed the first time, but I noticed this time. Yeah. So
For sure. Also, fun thing to note, when Tristan assumes the throne and the ghosts are finally able to leave the quote-unquote mortal realm.
Yeah.
Note that some of their ghost lights go up and some go down.
Oof, I did not note that, but that's a fun little detail.
Yeah. I don't think I noticed that till after I had seen this a couple times. But yeah, a few of them head downwards.
Woof. My final note was that the sword fight, again, this is part of the sort of potentially polarizing climax of the film. I love the sword fight between Corpse Septimus and Tristan. I love two things. I love when she drops him in the water and he gets and he drowns in
I don't know how
amazingly
they did that.
done. I don't know exactly how they did it, but really well done and really creepy. And it reminded me of the scene in Harry Potter 6 where Katie Bell gets...
Yeah.
It was like a similar looking type of thing. Real cool. But the sword fight between Tristan and him is so well done, and I have no idea how they did that.
It's so well choreographed, and it had to have been like a body double.
Well, it's definitely like a stunt double,
like somebody who's
on
maybe
like
a
wires.
Contortionist.
I think that, but also like on wires, and also partially at times like a dummy. Like I think like a weird like a dummy that is like swinging. You know what I mean? Like I think sometimes it's a person doing stuff, other times and that's the kind of thing that's just like wildly impressive of how they pieced all that together. But swapping between like a dummy at times and like probably a performer on wires and like all this different stuff. Because
it looks so convincing.
It looks so convincingly like a corpse being on strings, drug around sword fighting. And it's also on top of that, I think, and I could be wrong. I'm far from an expert, but I've watched a lot of like breakdowns of like historical fencing in like media and like saying like how how good it is in terms of like the choreography being like actually accurate to like how you would fight, like all that sort of stuff. And I actually think it's actually like better than a lot of sword fights in a lot of popular media in terms of like how they're fighting. Again, it's a corpse, so it looks ridiculous, but a lot of the elements and the way that Tristan is like fencing actually looks like similar stuff that if you were actually fencing you would do. There's not a lot of like wild swinging of swords other than by the dummy, which is again but like Tristan is actually kind of fencing in a way that looks somewhat like fencing. He has a stupid sword for it. He has like this. I do not like his sword. I like everything about his costume and all the props, and the sword itself looks cool.
Yeah, I think that's what they were probably concerned with.
It looks cool, but it's so short. It's like a machete. It's a weird choice, especially for the time period. It feels wrong. He needs either like a cutlass or a rapier. Like that's what he should have. But he has this weird like machete thing that I'm not a fan. Like it's, they needed to give him a different. He needed a sword like Septimus had. Like that's what he should have had. But whatever. Anyways, still a great scene. And Arthur Weasley plays the goat. Man,
yes, he does.
A man
he
turned
plays
into
a goat man.
A goat turned into a man, and it does a great job. And I was like, that's Arthur Weasley. Fantastic. We're going to talk about the homework?
Yeah, briefly. I don't think we need to really dig into it. So we talked in our prequel about high fantasy versus fairy tales and what both of those things are and how they are different from each other, even though they're both under the umbrella of general fantasy. And we were going to think about whether or not Stardust was high fantasy or whether it was a fairy tale. And I feel like what we have here is a book-movie split. The book, to me, feels a little bit more like a fairy tale. There's not like a high level of grandeur in either scope or stakes. I think both of those things could arguably be high, but in the book, they aren't presented or discussed, nor do they factor into the narrative in a way that makes them feel very high or very grand. Additionally, while there is some character arc in the book, the narrative isn't overly concerned with it. And those were kind of our three hallmarks, right? Places where these two genres really differ was in the scope and the stakes, and then like character versus like morality play, as fairy tales often are. The movie, to me, on the other hand, leans much more into high fantasy. And I think the visual aspect of it really aids in that.
Absolutely.
I think seeing the grand sweeping scenery and like witnessing the powers of the witch's magic really helps to widen the scope and heighten the stakes.
Yeah.
And on top of that, both Tristan and Yvain's character arcs, I think, are much more apparent and made much more of in the movie than they are in the book.
Yeah, with the narrator in the movie, which is Ian McKellen, and especially early on, you get some very Lord of the Rings feeling.
Yes.
Establishments of the world, like big flying shots over Stormhold and Ian McKellen narrating about the king and and it feels very high fantasy.
Yes.
It feels very grand.
Yeah,
and I think that is a lot very obviously inspired by the success of Lord of the Rings and kind of going on that. I mean, this movie goes a completely its own way. It's not aping Lord of the Rings in the way Ella Enchanted was with Shrek, but it does draw some elements of it, and I think that's one of the ways. So, the book, more of a fairy tale. The movie, more of high fantasy.
Yeah.
There you go. That makes sense. Final verdict. Let's do it.
Now, are you ready for your sentence?
Sentence? But there must be a verdict first.
Sentence first, verdict afterward.
All right, so for me, it's the movie.
Yep.
Everyone is shocked.
I'm aghast.
I think for most of the film, the scriptwriters actually did a good job with making changes and cuts that help the story along while still maintaining its integrity.
Yeah.
It's essentially the same story, just with like nips and tucks along the way to streamline it. We don't truly deviate from the book's narrative until the climax. And like I said, movie climax just works better for me.
Yeah.
Like intellectually, I get the book climax, but for me, it just kind of fizzles, which is disappointing after an engaging and entertaining story.
Yeah.
And that's really what it boils down to for me. I think the book was great, but I think the movie told an overall more engaging and satisfying story. And the movie isn't without its weaknesses. There's definitely some stuff that didn't age well, and there's definitely some narrative weak points.
Yep.
And yes, the movie is a little cheesy.
Yeah.
But you know what? So is The Princess Bride.
Yeah.
So is Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah.
So is Enchanted and every Disney princess movie ever, because you just don't get a fantasy action romance without at least a slight cheese factor.
A little bit of cheese.
And I'm okay with that.
With a mouse amount of cheese. So, there you go. It is decided. Stardust, the movie, is better, and if you disagree, you're wrong. Katie, while you get ready to tell them what we're going to have for next time, I'm going to remind everybody that we would love it if you could rate and review us on all of the platforms where you listen to our show. Also, you can follow us on all the social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Goodreads. We have a subreddit. Also, all of those places you can find us. Just search for This Film Is Lit. And that's it. Katie, what's next?
So we just did a couple like lighthearted fantasy properties right in a row.
Yes.
So for our next property, we are going to do an about face even more jarring than Michelle Pfeiffer does at the end of Stardust. And we're going to do Pet Semetary.
Yes, indeed, because it comes out in theaters.
Yes, it does.
Soon. And I assume our theater's going to get this one. I would imagine.
I would think it's a big enough release for our little theater to get it.
I would imagine. It'll be tough. It's been a while since we've done a movie theater one.
Yeah.
It can be tough because you got to try to take notes. You have to try to go at a time where you can like pull your phone out and take notes. We'll figure that out. We'll make it work.
Try to sit in the back row.
We'll make it work. But that's the next one, Pet Semetary. So look out for that in 2 weeks. And that's it. Until that time, guys, gals, non-binary, and everybody else.
Keep reading books.
Keep watching movies.
And keep being awesome.